When it comes to using planters in the garden, I like to get really creative. I've got quite a lot of different planters in this garden, and one thing that I do tend to use a lot of is these old dustbins. Now, they're relatively easy to pick up still. I come across them quite often in people's gardens who don't want them anymore, and they've neglected them, or they've got holes in the bottom and they think they're of no use anymore, and especially now because we use this ridiculous plastic types, but it frees up stuff like this. So I like to get a little creative with it, and in this case, this dustbin, although it's got sort of damage all over the place, I think that's a little bit of a bonus to it. It's a bit wacky, a bit weird, but there's so much you can do with it. Now, you often get people complaining about different plants that are a bit invasive, got running rootstock, etc., etc. But one easy way to deal with this, as in this case, is putting them into containers. So this is quite a deep container. Well, it's a dustbin in it. So what I've done is I've actually cut the base off, and it was totally rotten. So it had to be cut off completely. Of no use. Usually I'll try and use the bottom again, but it's of no use, so I didn't bother this time because it's just too rotten and too broken. Whereas this is absolutely perfect. So if you've got some type of an invasive species that you really like, but you're a bit fearful of putting it in your garden, then consider containers. You can get just ordinary plant pots, obviously, but a bit boring. Up a grassy bottom, I like to get a little bit more creative than most people. I don't mind it being rusty. I don't mind it being green. You can see this is green. And what I've got in here is a plant called Rheum australe, and it has like a bit of a running root zone, really. It won't go massively out of kilter, but if it's given a chance, it will run around a little bit. Now, if I zoom into this is actually called the Himalayan rhubarb, and it has this stunning veining going on at the moment. That will eventually turn back to green, but it will become quite a sizable rhubarb. It's not rhubarb you're going to eat, but it's going to look good in this. Now, I often talk about this garden and how steep it is, and you can't really tell. And to be honest, I'm looking through this and I can't really tell how steep it is here. But from this point here to up to the dustbin, it's a good 2 foot rise in that short distance. This may demonstrate it a bit better. There's quite a rise there. And that area there never really grows. You can see we've got problems with it. It tends never to grow, and I know what the problem is. We're on chalk. This wall was built some years back, and what happened was the builders who built it weren't really bothered where they put the chalk. And you can see here, chalk all over the place. And I'm 100% convinced that the reason this isn't growing is because of the chalk. So I've actually used that to my advantage, put this planter in, and really gone for it. Then we've got things like the Brunera. This particular one's Jack Frost, obviously only just getting into its stride. I've split this one up, got one this side, one this side. So what's going to happen over time is that is going to look really nice. It'll get bigger, obviously, the leaf, and it should be complementary to the dustbin itself, because it's more like a silvery grey, so it will be nice. Other planters. It's not the only planter I have. I have several different types. I've shown you the bale feeders before, the sheep bale feeders. This is it at the moment as it stands. So that euphorbia, which is Amygdaloides robii whistleberry garnet, is doing really well now. It's flowering just as I wished. It's starting to fill out in here. There's a few weeds in there I've got to get on top of, which I will this weekend. It is a bank holiday, so it'll be a nice time to do it. And we've also got the silver birch in there. growing away, and it's not in leaf yet, but that won't be too long before that's leafing up. It's already budding up, so that's a good use for a bale feeder. You can pick those up relatively cheap. Well, relatively cheap. They're still about 130 quid, I think, but it's worth it. I have 3 of those. As I've shown you many times before, here's another use of the dustbin. This one, I only chopped a bit of the base off, and we're using it as a bird bath. And believe me, they use that all the time. Once this grass grows up, this is Deschampsia Gold Tow. It'll have these lovely seed heads that'll be very complementary to this. So that'll look good. And these things don't look out of place in gardens, in anybody's garden, modern garden, an old-fashioned garden, a bit of a cottagey type garden will do well. And these things as well look, I'm sure, would look good in a sort of a gravel area. Now, as I've said, I do have quite a few different types of planters. One of my favourite things to get is this watering trough, is what it is. I've got grasses in it. I've got hosta, which is just coming up now, heuchera, and that's all I've got in here really. So the grass is doing really well. It's Calamagrostis Eldorado, which has a striped midrid, a yellow stripe. Not very clear at the moment. It is starting to show. In fact, I can see it quite well. It's not coming through as good on this camera. Let's try and zoom into that one. Yeah, that's better there. But it does really well in a planter. And the hosta will do well. And the heuchera is just Zabeliana, just a plain old thing, but it's really good. And then we have the hosta, which is really nice and looks really good in this. It stands tall. It's I'm trying to think what hosta I've put into here. Bear with me. Yep, it's hosta Crossa Regal. I've got a couple of these in the garden, and it really is a good one. If you've got like a metal bin or a metal bucket, hosta Crossa Regal would look really good in it, because it's quite a tall growing species on the stem, and then it sort of like splays out, so it's quite nice. Other things that I use is this type of thing here. Now that's a really nice feature there. I could use that as a planter, but in this case I've decided this is how I want to use it, and it's been in here since we moved up here, and it looks really good. Again, Rheum palmatum, this is a different Rheum, looking really good. We've been lucky this year, we've not had no frosting on it. But one thing I like about this is the different colours it produces, and if memory serves me right, yeah, it has a kind of a purplish undertone to it, but it just has lovely tones this year. It's probably the best I've seen it. And it has these like almost creamy veining in it, and that's nice, but it really complements this container. So that's another type of container. Right, let's have a look. I tend to replicate different ones and tend to use them time and time again. This one here, this container here was it was in a garden, and it had been half buried, and it was full of water. It still holds water quite well actually, but I've got this Restio in it. That's looking really nice. So that Restio is sitting happily in there, but it's not actually in the container itself. I prefer to keep it in this plastic container, because there's going to come a point when I'm going to need to repot it on. It's not at that point yet, but it's doing well. So that's another good use of that. Now these are what your plumbers will be taking out, and they just throw them away. It's a header tank, belongs up in the attic. But again, a great use if you can get hold of these. Now I tend to like the ones with studs in them, like that. They're a lot more interesting. They're nice. There's nothing in this one at the moment. I'm not sure whether I'm ever going to put anything into it. If I put anything in, it'll be a plant that's already in its pot that I'll not bother taking out and filling with. But you can use these things as little water features as well. But you do have to you do have to fill these holes in. There is a bit of water in there, and it's naturally holding its water. If you was going to use this as a container, obviously you would have to pierce it. But that's really nice. I mean, it just simply looks, it's just simple and it looks good. I like it against the oak barrel. Looks nice. Again, I use oak barrels to sometimes sit plant pots on top. Just a clay plant pot would look good on top of that. And another bale feeder. There you go. Got another bale feeder. Now this is the one that's got Lutaria riparius, which is a miscanthus growing in it. And finally, it's decided it's going to come up. There you go. So that's making a start. Looks little at the minute, but that's going to be 15 to 20 foot when it's finished. Again, another dustbin. That's obviously for the birds. We feed the birds here next to it. So we've given them a bit of a watering hole. So they don't have to travel too far. And I quite enjoy doing that sort of thing. See if we can find any more. Okay, so this other one was used for Miscanthus Lutaria riparius originally. This is going to be reused again. I've got Lysomachia clethroides, which is the gooseneck loose strife, is going to go back into this. It won't stay here because it's not good enough for it in this area. This is the secret garden that's in development at the moment. It won't go here, but it will be moved into part of the garden. And I can choose to sink it as I did before, as you can see where the soil mark is, halfway down it. That's how far I sunk it in. Or I could simply put it on a couple of bricks to let it drain. We've got drainage holes in there. That's what you must do as well. Otherwise, your plants are going to drown. Let's have a look. Let's just take us a wander up here, see what else we can find. Containers. Here we go. So I've got ordinary plant pots as well. You know, containers. They are containers at the end of the day. But I also find this type of thing, old buckets, and I've had some planted in that, which is an hosta, which I finally decided I wanted out and into the garden. So we've got several hostas just coming up. Hostas are always better in the ground, in my opinion, but they do really well in buckets and containers. And they did do really well here. The other things you can get, these old, well, they were used for boiling up your washing, really, weren't they? They were used in old outhouses. If they're still in good condition, as this one is, they'll still contain water, which this one does. I've done this Anamenthial lessaniana, this grass. I've taken it out and it's just sat there in water. It'll do fine in there for the next couple of days, should I choose to leave it there. But it's another good use. So what I could do with this container is I could actually just use it for water and just simply leave it, just with water in there, and it'd look quite nice. Another one we've got here, another cow drinker, and this one's just got 3 hostas in it, 3 different types of hosta. So look, there's one there, one here, and the other one's over there. So we've got 3 different types of hosta. I try and keep the labels until I'm sure what they are. This one's Buckshaw Blue. This one's Blue Mouse Ears, and then the other one's Devon Green. Now, I'll show you these again as it gets going. Other wacky things I like to use, things like this. These are obviously off of old gramophones. You could use that as a planter if you wish to. You could plant into that, and you could have something like sempervirens, ferns, any sort of things, or little hostas as well planted into there. Obviously, you'd have to get a bit more creative with it, but you could do it. Wouldn't be a problem. More containers. So this is another. It was more of a, well, it was actually used for donkeys at a previous place, and I rescued it before it got binned because it was likely to be binned when the donkeys had gone. But I keep watering this. I keep a little duck in there, a little plastic duck. We had a water boatman in there last year. I called him Walter Boatman. I thought it was quite amusing at the time. He did eventually die, which quite surprised me. But anyway, it's he lived in there all year. And again, this one's more interesting. It's more study. That does quite well. And then this one here is the smallest header tank I've found up to now. It can't be no more than 1.5 foot. And we've got a lily in here. Is it growing? Yes, it's trying to come up. You can't, I don't think you can see, no, you can't see that. But there is a lily in there about to grow. Other wacky things that I do find as well. Now, believe it or not, this was found in a hedge. This is a planter, so it's not really it is a container, but it's not like a wacky container. This would have been a sort of an urn planter, and it was thrown away. And it was thrown away because it looks a bit damaged. And this is what I like. I love to see that sort of thing. I would never throw it away. Some people said, was I going to tidy the top up around the top there? No, perfect. It's perfect as it is. We'll put this rhodiola in there, the rosier. That'll go into there, and that should look really nice. And then finally, just to end this little talk, show you all the little planters. Buckets. There you go, plenty of buckets. The tin I showed you earlier on that I am going to be planting up again, this is the other half of it. And again, more buckets. We like buckets. Old buckets. Most people can find these tin buckets. It should not be a problem for you. You should be able to come across them. So we're getting into summer now, and it's starting to feel warm out here. So it's now a good time to start looking around for planters to put stuff in. Old dustbin baths. Old baths. Tin baths, rather. There's two here, two little ones. Not quite sure what you'd use those for. Washing, I would have thought. Pre-soaking your stuff, I don't know. Can't even remember where I got these from. But I just pick things up all the time. So in this one, we've got Euphorbia, Grithii dixter. And the reason I've got it in here is because I didn't want it to escape. Now, Euphorbia Grithii is a bit of a not, I wouldn't say invasive, but I would say it goes its own way. I didn't want it to do that, so I've been growing it in here. I've been growing it in here for 5-6 years, and it's done really well. And actually, it keeps it very stubby, not grow very big. Another good thing for the container is it reduces the size of the plant itself, and it grows, probably only makes about 1.5 foot, but in autumn it just goes this stunning orangey red. It's like it's on fire, and in here it'll just completely cover this tin bath. I split it at the end of last year, so there's only a few coming up at the moment. So again, this is going to take some time to fill out, but it will contain it and stop it. I've got Plioblastus oreocomus in this one, and it's like a bamboo, and it's permanently in. Now, you can actually plant this one in. It is a little bit of a runner, but it's not at the point where it couldn't go into the garden. But I like to see it in here. It just looks more interesting. Okay, so that's a few ideas for planters. We'll end where we started. Back to the dustbin. If you can get hold of an old dustbin, bashed, battered, the more bashed, the more battered, the better, in my opinion. It looks more interesting. So I would advise you to get hold of one of these. If nothing else, stick it in a courtyard, stick it in your garden, do whatever you wish, and you'll be rewarded once your plants start growing. So we shall take pictures of this as this Rhea Australe gets going, and you're going to see the true beauty once it does start getting going. So, hope that's been a bit of a guide for you, and shown you that you don't just have to use clay pots, you don't have to use plastic pots, but you can use things like this, and they are interesting and well worth hunting out, searching out. Don't overpay for them. People have cottoned onto this, and they will try and charge you an arm and a leg, and it's just not worth it. Just wait around. You'll find one eventually. One will turn up, and snaffle it if it does. Okay, thanks for looking. Ta-ra.